running on my phone's data.
No problem.
Om Shuklam Varadharam Vishnu Shivarnam Chaturбhujam Prasannavathanam Dhayet Sarvabhutashantayet Rama Bhadraya Ramachandraya Vedhase Raghunathaya Nathaya Sitaya Pataye Namaha Pujantam Rama Rameti Madhuram Madhuraksharam Aruhya Kavitashakham Vande Valmiki Anjananandanam Veedam Janaki Shokanasanam Kapishamakshahantaram Vande Lankabhayankaram नमोस्तु रामाय सलक्ष्मणाय देव्यै च तस्यै जनकात्मजायै नमोस्तु रुद्रेन्द्रयमानिलेभ्यो नमोस्तु चन्द्रार्कमरुद्गणेभ्यः ॐ नमः परमहंसास्वादितचरणकमलचिन्मकरन्दाय भक्तजनमानसनिवासाय श्रीरामचन्द्राय ॐ So we finished third sarga in the last session. I hurried up a bit because I wanted to finish the sarga in the last session, and also in the last there was some power cut at my end, so I hurried up. There was something that I wanted to tell in the last sarga. Actually, two things. One of which I will tell later, but even before that, like I said even earlier, that some things when these Sangraha Ramayana kind of things are coming in initial sargas. I mean, after this you won't get perhaps a Sangraha Ramayana. This third sarga was where a Sangraha of the entire Ramayana has come again, like it has come in the first sarga also. So when these things come, I thought I will tell some things that I have heard from Mahatmas or I have felt when I read, so that in the future, if God forbid we don't proceed even further, you might be able to, when you read by yourself, you might be able to connect these things in that way and look at it. In that sense, I thought I will tell some nice things. So one of which was about Lanka. So we say Lankini, but then in Valmiki Ramayana she is called Lanka only. So the embodiment of Lanka Puri. So usually in our religion we have something called Abhimani Devatas. So for everything we identify in the nature or in fact anything we identify with some Devata. So that means so we call them as Abhimani Devatas. So these things come up in Vedanta very nicely. So consciousness that is having a particular thing as its limiting adjunct as the upadhi. So that consciousness with that upadhi is given a name, and because it then becomes a conscious entity limited by an adjunct. So you give it a specific name, and then we give it a name of devata. So the same thing is with all indriyas and things like that. So even this Lankini, so Lanka is Strilinga Lanka. So Dirgham you should say that Lanka, she is also the Abhimani, I wouldn't say Devata, but the Abhimani, whatever person of the city called Lanka. If city called Lanka takes a form, she is this Lanka or Lankini. So there was a great scholar of Ramayana called Sri Bhasham Appalacharya Garu. So he was from Andhra actually. So I have written about him earlier also from what I heard from another Mahatma in a pravachan. Um, so today I will tell some general things because I will not be able to finish the sarga today because I have some comments to make in between, which we will come to later. But anyway, so Srivacham Appalacharya Garu was a great scholar of Sri Vaishnava philosophy. He's a great Sanskrit scholar also and Vishishtadvaitin. And his entire life, since a very young age, he started talking about Ramayana. He made it a point that all his life, wherever he was, every year during Ramanavami, the 9 days starting from Ugadi to Ramanavami, those 9 days, which is so that Navaratri, he would give pravachans on Ramayana, be it at his own home for one or two people or five people, 10 people, or be it in a huge sabha, wherever it may be. He made it as a vratam to live like that, to teach Ramayana or speak on Ramayana every year. And then during Dhanurmasam, he would speak for 30 days on Tirupavi, wherever he was, be it a small sabha or a big sabha or in his own home. If in a particular year nobody invites him to speak, he would speak in his own house. So it was like he lived a life like that, a great scholar and a great bhakta at the same time. So in his last moments, I believe, so he was in Vizag by then. He was bedridden. He was sick for a long time, and then he, on a particular day, the day that he was supposed to pass away or attain Vishnu's feet, so that day he gets a heart stroke, and then he's taken. I mean, his son calls for a taxi, and they take him in a car. They were about to take him in a car to the hospital, and then somebody keep coming towards him, and then this person, so he notices that somebody comes to him, and then he realizes that these people have come to meet him, and then, so mind you, he has suffered a stroke, so but then despite that, he greets them. He says, "Oh, have you come for me? Please don't mind. I've just suffered a stroke. They are taking me to the hospital. We will talk some other time." He says like that and gets into the car. Apparently, his son asks him, after getting into the car, "Is it necessary that you should have stopped like that? So even when you suffer a stroke, even 1 minute is precious. So you waited and then you greeted them, and was this necessary?" So it seems then he tells his son, "See, all my life I have been speaking about Rama and Rama's qualities, and one of Rama's such qualities is that he is Smita Purva Bhashi, and then he's Purva Bhashi cha Raghavaha. So Purva Bhashi Priyam Vadaha, these qualities are there. Some qualities of Rama is that whenever he speaks to people, he speaks smilingly, and more importantly, when he sees that somebody is coming to speak to him, or when he encounters somebody, he first greets them. So he goes out of the way and speaks first. So this kind of thing we see in life, that when, I mean, we want to talk to somebody, we know that somebody is talking to us, but we have this feeling, why should I start? Let him initiate the conversation. Things like, but Rama didn't have such feelings. He would always be the first initiator of any, even a casual greeting. So I have lived my life teaching about Rama like that. So how can I not greet somebody when I know that somebody is coming to talk to me? So he says that, and then, but then he actually passes away even before they reach the hospital. So I am just remembering that great Mahatma, because he gave a very nice explanation to this Lanka. So in his Sundarakanda Pravachana, so he says this Lankini is actually the Ahamvritti that sadhaka. I mean, everybody has Ahamvritti. So this I thought, the ego we say. So this Lankini is Ahamvritti. So if you have to search for Atma, and this is a very search as in quote unquote search for Atma, you have to hold on to Ahamvritti and then examine the Ahamvritti. This is what Vedanta has been saying, Shankara, and everybody. I mean, Upanishads say that, and then even Ramana Maharshi was very famous for making us do this vichara of who am I, this who am I kind of vichara. So this is what Lankini is symbolizing, he would say, because Lankini, if you see, when her character comes, so she will stop Hanuman from entering, and then Hanuman asks her, "Who are you?" So that Lanka says, "Ahameva Puri Lanka." So I am this Lanka Puri, she would say. So actually, she's not Lanka, but then she has that Abhimana. So, like I said, she's the Abhimani person for Lanka. I mean, like the Abhimani Devatas, maybe the Abhimani Rakshasi, whatever. So she has that Abhimana that I am this Lanka. So, what is that Abhimana in us? The Abhimana is this Ahankara. So, only when you hold on to this Ahankara and you have to get in, this Adhyatma Vidya, that is, you have to go in, search within and not outside. So, to go in, how do you go in? You go in by first holding on to the I thought, the Hankara. So that is what Lankini symbolizes, he says. I hope I could convey the beauty of what he tried to convey, but of course, I'm not as great a communicator as him. So I thought I should tell this because the character of Lankini only came in this Sarga, and then, of course, it comes again in Sundarakanda. Uh, so Ramayana is predominantly that way an Adhyatma Shastra only. I mean, ultimately, if you see, or that kind of explanation can also be given. I mean, if you like, you can take other explanations along with this explanation. But why should a rishi take an interest in anybody's story, even if he be a great, I mean, Mahatma or a great king? So a rishi, a tapasvi like Valmiki, would have taken pains to write such a great kavya only because it is Adhyatma Shastra. Um, you can say in that sense. I mean, so there is a reason why I'm saying these things. I mean, it will become clearer later. So Valmiki Ramayana can be seen as an Adhyatma Shastra in that sense. You will see that the next sarga starts with the description of city of Ayodhya. That's how Ramayana starts, the description of city of Ayodhya. So it is something like the sadhaka or the jignasu or any jiva. I mean, in general, we all think that we are embodied in the body. So we are the embodied. I mean, we are caught up in this body. I am a jiva inside the body. That's how we think. That's how all Astika things starts. In fact, so Chandrasekhara Bharati ji in his Viveka Chudamani Bhashyam, he writes very nicely. The first point of Astikatvam is to have this Dehatma Deha Vyatirikta Atma Buddhi. So there is some Atma which is different from the body, and that Atma is residing inside the body. That's how we all think. So, and then we think that our happiness is coming from outside. So the jiva is, so Dasharatha, mind you, so Dasharatha means this body for which the 10 organs, karmendriyas and jnanendriyas are the rathas. So he enjoys this world. So that way, I mean, through these karmendriyas and jnanendriyas, in that sense, the jiva thinks that he is Dasharathi. That means the jiva thinks that he belongs to this body, and the happiness that he enjoys comes from outside. The Shanti Sita, they say. So Shanti Sita is coming from outside. He thinks like that. So from Mithila, he gets Sita to Ayodhya. That means from outside, he's getting it inside. But mind you, she's Vaidehi. She's not coming from outside, but she's your own self. I mean, the self is the Ananda that you're searching, but you don't know. You think she's coming from outside, and then I mean, the jiva is married to Ananda in that sense, and comes from outside and thinks that Ananda is coming from outside. And then, of course, when you are depending on external things for your Ananda, then you are banished from your state of Ananda. You lose that Ananda. And then slowly Guru will come and tell you that actually the Ananda is not somewhere outside, it's within you. Why don't you search within? So it's poignant always also to remember that Sita is lost in Aranya Kanda. So Aranya is what? Aranya is the self only. Aranya is there, is that in which there is no conflicts. So what is it in which there is no conflicts? Only in the self. In everything else, there is conflict. I mean, wherever there is Dvaita, there is conflict. So wherever there are two, the two are in opposition. The only place where there is no duality whatsoever is the self, and that is Aranya, where there is no conflict, no Rana. Rana is conflict, war. So Aranya is that in which there is no conflict. So it's irony that in a state where you are supposed to have Shanti, in your own self, you are supposed to have Shanti, but you have lost it because you think it's outside. And then the Guru tells, so in Ramayana also we see that slowly, I mean, Jatayu tells first that, he gives a hint first. I mean, you slowly start seeing hope through the Shruti, that your Shanti is actually there within you only. And then you have to search for it. So that is Shravanam part. So you can take Aranya Kanda and Kishkindha Kanda, Shravana, where, Rama gets glimpses of the possibility of Sita actually, or the possibility of he regaining Sita, he hears in Aranya and Kishkindha Kanda. And then Sundara Kanda is Mananam, because Hanuman is going there and searching for Sita. So all this I am building up based on that Mahatma's words that Lankini is Ahamriti, by Rama's grace. These thoughts have been coming to me, so I'm telling you, I'm not speaking these classes with a, I mean, what should I say, with a preset agenda, as in I have to speak like this, and I mean, I'm not speaking with that agenda, but say our class is starting at 7:45, so around 6 o'clock I start seeing the Vyakhya, for that day. So today, as I was thinking, I thought these thoughts came to my mind. So I thought I should tell you all. So I'm telling you this. Anyway, so Manana is Sundara Kanda, and then Nididhyasanam is Yuddha Kanda, where all your Viparita Bhavanas slowly one by one you are eliminating, which is Rama fighting the war. Ultimately, of course, Ajnana is killed, and then Rama comes back, gains his Swarajyam, so gains his own kingdom back. So he's banished from his kingdom because he was thinking that he was part of he was embodied in a body, he thought. But later he realizes that actually, so Tattvavedanta ji beautifully says, we think that, we think that we are inside the self, but inside the body, but then you have to actually realize that the body, the world, everything is only a, what should I say, a thought in your mind. I mean, it's not that you are in the body, but it's the other way. The body is in your thoughts. So something like that. Then he regains his Rajyam. So this is there even in Upanishad, Swarajyam. So Apnoti Swarajyam. So there are mantras like that in Taittiriya Upanishad, and elsewhere also the Swarajya thing comes up. So that Swarajya Siddhi, also there is a book like that, which comes precisely from this Upanishad mantra, Apnoti Swarajyam. So Rama attains that Swarajyam. So that is, he realizes, or the Jiva realizes that he is nothing but the self, the ultimate self. And then having that, or rather, that's the end of this Jiva's journey. So why am I saying all this is to say that if you look upon Ramayana as an Adhyatma Shastra, of course, there is much to gain. If you look upon Sundarakanda as a chapter where Mananam is happening and Nididhyasanam is happening subsequently, it's all something that we can take away, because in Sundarakanda, there is lot of scope for giving such kind of meaning. Elsewhere in the Ramayana, maybe it might be too much of Duranvaya, though you can still make it, but in Sundarakanda is very evident Uh, so that these kind of what should I say meanings can be given. For example, when Hanuman sees um, Hanuman sees Mandodari first, he mistakes Mandodari to be Sita. So that is the Jiva mistaking the Anandamaya Kosha for the real self. So these things come up in Upanishads. So he searches in various places. So he searches in the place where food, and so that came in the previous sarga also, maybe if I remember rightly. So these places where food and liquor is available, alcohol is available in Lanka. So those places he searches for. That is like search thinking for doing an Anveshana or Vichara of the Annamaya Kosha. So starting from there till Anandamaya Kosha, the Jiva is negating the possibility that those koshas could be the self, and ultimately he reaches the self, which is Sita. So Shanti Sita Samayuktaha Atma Ramo Virajate. There is a shloka like that, I think by Sadashiva Brahmendra or somebody like that. So of course he's a great Mahatma, we all know. So he also writes a song like that. So Ragadvesha Mukhasura Mari. So there is a song like that he writes on Rama, where he shows us all these asuras are actually our own Viparita Bhavanas, which Rama kills one by one. So if you take up that way, and then this another thing that Sri Bhasham Appalacharya Garu says is, see, when Ravana is first being described, so Valmiki first describes the hands of Ravana. That's because we are so that what should I say? We take ourselves to be the karta. So with those hands, so he has killed those rakshasas, these people, those people, all that comes in that Sundarakanda. So that kartrutvam is being, so kartrutvam is vijnanamaya kosha. So all that is being negated, something like that. So there is scope for giving such meanings. It's very, to a student of Vedanta or to a student of any Adhyatma Vidya, it's very evident that Sundarakanda is possibly highly symbolic also. So if you take this way of a Jiva's journey, if you take, so mind you can ask me, is Rama Jiva? But are you putting Rama as the Jiva? But if you, as students of Vedanta or Advaita Vedanta, Jiva is Brahman only. So Rama is, the Jiva is Parabrahman even when the Jiva doesn't know it. So it's like that. Rama is the Jiva, Rama is Parabrahman. Something like the Jiva is actually the Parabrahman. So if you take Ramayana to be such a kind of a Shastra, then it ends with um, Yuddhakanda and Swarajya Siddhi and Rama Pattabhishekam. Very interestingly, this Abhishekam also. So this Pattabhishekam, which we say, the Swarajya Abhishekam. So in Yajna Kanda, in the context of Yajna, suppose you do Somayaga, then after Somayaga is performed, then they do something called Avabhrita Snanam, the Somayaji and the Somidamma, they say. So the wife of the Somayaji, both of them do Avabhrita Snanam, and after that they do an Abhisheka to that Somayaji and his wife, that from today onwards you will be called a Somayaji, to say that they do an Abhisheka. And then when a Raja does Rajasuya Yaga, even after the Yaga completes, now to say that you are the Chakravarti, they make him sit on the throne and they do Abhisheka. So that is Swarajya Abhisheka. So that Pattabhishekam only is what is mentioned. In the Atma context, Swarajya Abhisheka is not something that, literally you will not do an Abhisheka, but this Anatma is going away. Your misunderstanding of the self is going away and you remain as the self. That itself is the Abhisheka. So this is an expression that Sureshwaracharya also uses in Naishkarmya Siddhi. Yeah. So I thought I would say these things. So that way you see, Ramayana stops with Yuddhakanda. Now, why am I taking this up? It's evident perhaps. These days, a lot of posts are going on about whether Uttarakanda has been written by Valmiki, and there are views out on it, to which I will come back later. But then, because I started with this idea of Lanka, the Lankini being Ahamritti, so I thought that I should tell, because it's a beautiful concept. In fact, I was amazed when I heard Sri Bhasham Appalacharya Garu explain it. I remember I told Tattvavedantaji also, he was also amazed. There is so much to learn from Ramayana actually. If you read Valmiki's original Ramayana means the Mula, I mean to say. Not that, translations there, but translations can give some kind of, they can't do an entire justice. But then there is so much to learn from Ramayana always. Even if you have read the entire Ramayana once, if you're rereading it, you always see that, my God, there is so much to learn more. Anyway, so because of that Lankini, I thought I will say these things, and the Adhyatma part. By Rama's grace, I got some thoughts which I shared with you all. If you like it, you can take it. If not, obviously you can leave it. So we finished Tritiya Sarga, and then we are now entering Chaturtha Sarga. Atha Chaturtha Sarga. So I told you that following Govindaraja's explanation, that Sargas 2, 3, and 4 are, now that the Kavya of Ramayana has to come up. So Sargas 2, 3, and 4 are telling Vaktru Vailakshanyam, then Vishaya Vailakshanyam, and now fourth Sarga will tell you Prabandha Vailakshanyam. So the uniqueness or the greatness of the speaker, and Vishaya Vailakshanyam, the uniqueness or the greatness of the subject matter. And then this Sarga will tell you the greatness of the way it is written. So Prabandha Vailakshanyam. And what is Prabandha Vailakshanyam? Prabandha Vailakshanyam is, it is written by a person who is Parama Apta. So Valmiki is Maharshi. So I have told this already, but then that is one of the parts of the Prabandha Vailakshanyam. So it is spoken by a Maharshi who has all our welfare in his mind. I mean, he has the welfare of people in general, of the entire world in mind. And such a Maharshi has written it. Therefore, this text, this particular way of writing, Prabandha Vailakshanyam, is there for that reason. Second reason is the Vishaya, which we have seen in the previous Sarga, that Vishaya itself is amazing, I mean unique, because it describes the story of a Mahapurusha. So Punya Shloka Varnanam is what Govindaraja is saying. So this Punya Shloka is one whose fame is so great that it can purify us. So even in Bhagavatam it comes, the Uttama Shloka Gunanu Varnanat. So there is a shloka like either Parikshit or Shuka says that. I think Shukadeva says that in the Dashamaskandha somewhere. So Uttama Shloka, Punya Shloka is he who is famous for making the listeners of his story purified. So if we listen to Bhagavan's stories, we become purified. Our hearts become purified. That's the idea. So that is another that is another uniqueness of this Prabandham. And then another uniqueness is Mahajana Parigrihi Tattvam. So all the great rishis in the forest, they have all heard this Ramayana and they liked it a lot. So that is one. I mean, so they are all Maharshis, great Tapasvins. If they have liked it so much, that means this is something unique. This particular style of writing. I mean, this story itself is very unique. That is one. And another thing which he says is Prabandhanayaka Shlaghitatvam. So Prabandhanayaka, who's the hero of this Kavyam, which is it is Rama. So Rama himself listens to this and he's so amazed. I mean, this is so well written. He says such things. So if the hero of the story himself is is appreciating it, that means this is something nice. I mean, it's nicely describing his story. That's the meaning. So if somebody comes up with a biography of a great person, and the great person himself, what should I say? He praises that biography. That means to say that the biography is well written, very correctly, accurately written. So that is the Prabandha Vailakshanyam which this Sarga is telling. Praptarajasya Ramasya Valmikir Bhagavan Rishihi Chakara Charitam Kritsnam Vichitra Padamarthavate. So Praptarajasya Ramasya. So this Valmiki is writing the Charitam of Rama. So Kritsnam Charitam means the accurate, complete story of Rama he is writing. What kind of Rama? Praptarajasya Ramasya. So that Rama who has got back his kingdom, which means to say that Rama is ruling at this point of time when Valmiki is writing the story. So the chronology that somebody gave here, one of the Vyakyakaras gave, is when Valmiki finishes his story, by then, finishes writing. Of course, it takes time, Narada came and spoke to him one day. That day, Brahmaji also came and spoke to him. Then he decides to write, and then, of course, it takes some time to write it. So by the time he finished writing this, by then Rama, so Sita, if you accept Sita Parityaga, so Sita Parityaga has happened. And Ashwamedha Yaga, which Rama was supposed to was going to do, that hasn't happened yet. At that time, Valmiki has written the story. So Praptarajasya is Rama who has obtained his kingdom. That means when Rama is ruling, that time this has been written. Praptarajasya Ramasya Valmiki Bhagavan Rishihi Charitam Chakara. Charitam is that Rama's story Chakara is he has written. That means Valmiki has composed this kavya, and Kritsnam, that means completely comprehensively he has written. Valmikir Bhagavan Rishihi. So Bhagavan here is, I mean, you can say Bhagavan is a holy person. So holy people are, I mean, great sages are all addressed as Bhagavan. Though Bhagavan literally means one who has the six Aishwaryas, which are called Bhaga. So Jnanam, Vairagyam, Aishwaryam, Viryam, Yashas, and Shriya, wealth. So these six qualities, he who has completely in him, he is Bhagavan. But then we address Bhagavan even to elders, to great Mahatmas, Rishis. We say Bhagavan with respect. I mean, out of Adara, we call them as Bhagavan. That Bhagavan. Or you can say Bhaga here is the whatever the blessings that he got from Brahma. So one who has blessings from Brahmaji to compose this poem, that Valmiki. So Charitam Chakara. He has written this Charitra of Rama. And how did he write it? Vichitra Padam Arthavat. So Vichitra Padam Arthavat. Um, so Vividhanam, Vichitranam, Shabdarthalankaranam, Padam Sthanam. So this is Vichitra Padam. Vichitra Padam is so Padam here means Sthanam. One way of, I mean, Pada. So Vichitra Padam Arthavat simply means that it has different. Vichitra means variety. So different kinds of words with meaningful words. So this kavya is written by beautiful different kind of words which are meaningful, and this Vichitra Pada can also mean that different alankaras which are there in Kavya Shastra, all those beautiful things, similes, and those things are there. Such meaningful, beautiful work has been composed by Valmiki. Um, or you can say Vividhanam, Vichitranam, Shraddharthalankaranam, Padam Sthanam. So Vichitra Padam means the abode of all these beautiful alankaras and things like that. And then Arthavat is meaningful. So such a composition Valmiki has written. Now, Chaturvimshat Sahasrani Shlokanam Uktavan Rishihi Tatha Sarga Shatan Pancha Shatkandani Tathottaram. Now, Chaturvimshati Sahasrani. Chaturvimshat means Chaturvimshat Sahasrani. Chaturvimshat means Chaturvimshati or Chaturvimshat means 24. Sahasrani is 1000. So 24,000 Shlokanam. Shlokanam Chaturvimshati Sahasrani. This is an Arsha Prayoga. So what it means is Chaturvimshati Sahasra. So 24,000 shlokas are there in that poem which he has written. That Uktavan Rishihi, he has spoken. So that means he has composed. Valmiki has composed this kavyam having 24,000 shlokas. And Tatha Sargashatan Pancha Shatkandani Tathottaram. Tatha Sargashatan Pancha. So Pancha Shatan means 500 sargas. So it has 24,000 shlokas, 500 sargas, and Shatkandani. So it has 6 kandas. Tathottaram. Tathottara means additional one more kanda. So additional kanda, additional for sixth means what? So additional, it's used in singular and it's used after 6, that means 7. So Shatkandani Tathottara. Now comes this point. So whether the Uttarakanda has been written by Valmiki, it is a very contentious issue. Obviously, I obviously hold this view that it has not been written by Valmiki, and then some Mahatmas that I have had great respect for have also said it. Of course, other Mahatmas have also said that it has been written by Valmiki. I have great respect for them also. So we will come to those things. I thought I will tell some of my views here because these days a lot of posts are doing rounds that Valmiki has written Uttarakanda and things like that. So before that, let's just observe the shloka. So Chaturvimshat Sahasrani, 24,000 shlokas are there. And Sarga Shatan Pancha, so 500 sargas and 6 plus 1 kandas are there in this Ramayana. So it's a very generalized statement to make because actually in Ramayana there are no 24,000 shlokas and not 500 sargas. So Ramayana itself is a very ancient text. So it's obvious that since then, by now, because this has been an oral tradition and of all the available dated manuscripts of Ramayana, so there are some manuscripts which are not dated that we cannot say when they have been written. But of the available dated manuscripts of Ramayana, so the earliest available date is 1000 something CE. So it's like some 1000 years old is the available dated manuscript. So till then it was oral, and then of course there are some other manuscripts which are not dated. So you cannot say when was it composed, maybe before, maybe after. So it's bound that between the original time of composition till the time that it began. I mean, people began writing these manuscripts, began writing them on palm leaves and things like that. Some additions could have been made. So one great thing that Shiromani Kara and Govindaraja do in their Vyakhya is they say that yes, it's not true that there are 24,000 shlokas and 500 sargas. There are more than that. But one wonderful thing that they do is in their commentary, they say, so as of today, what is available is so and so. And that makes it now locked. I mean, now after this, whatever comes, you can say is interpolated in that sense. So up till the time of their Vyakhya, they have written. So there also there are some, I mean, difference of opinion, but I'm going by Govindaraja's count. Even Shiromani Kara gives a nice account of all these things. So I will tell you the count, but yeah, I will tell you the count first. Or rather, yeah, let me tell you this. Shatkandani Kathottaram Sargashatan Pancha, 500 sargas are there. So these people give this account. So Balakanda has 77 sargas, Ayodhya Kanda has 119 sargas, Aranya Kanda has 75 sargas, Kishkindha Kanda has 67, Sundara Kanda has 68, Yuddha Kanda has 131. So if you add all these things, it comes up to 537 sargas. So that itself is more than 500 already. So Sargashatan Pancha, when they say, so Tatha Sargashatan Pancha, so that is violating the rule there itself. So Vyakhyakas have said that this 500 sargas count is for the 6 kandas only. So what is the shloka also saying? Sargashatan Pancha Shatkandani. So Shatkandani, the 6 sargas, how are they? They are having 500 sargas. That's the meaning. And Tathottaram means so one more after that. So that means 7th sarga. So how many 7th kanda? How many sargas that this kanda has? So Shiromani Kara nicely says Tatha here means so there is one Alpa Prana Ta, then Mahaprana. So Thakara is there, Tha, Mahaprana, and then there is an A. So there is a Ta, Tha consonant, and A. So if you add these three, it becomes Tatha. So he says Ta means Ta denotes Akasha, which denotes Shunyam. So it's 0. And Tha means 1. So Tha denotes Prithvi. So Prithvi is only 1. So Thakara, not Tha the entire syllable, but Tha the consonant. So that consonant Tha denotes Prithvi, so 1. And then A denotes Vasudeva, which is also 1. So Tha, Tha, A means 0, 1, 1. And then always when these numbers are written in such worded format, so this we have these Katapayadi system, and then the system where so Katapayadi system is, I mean, each of the letters from Ka to Ka, I mean Ka, then Yara, Lava, these things are given, or maybe Ka till Papa, Bhama, till there, they are given numbers. Each one is given numbers. And I mean, this system is there in India where letters are given numbers and then shlokas are written in a coded form. Sometimes those coded form shlokas make meanings, sometimes they don't make any meaning. But then this coded form of numbers on letters is very famous. So by this Sankhya, wherever this is written like that, where numbers are coded into letters, everywhere you should count the numbers in reverse order. So Ankanam Vamato Gatihi, they say. So wherever these numbers are coded into shlokas as letters, you have to count the number ulta. So 0, 1, 1 means 110. So 110 sargas in Uttarakanda, and that satisfies the number. So that satisfies the number by 37 more. Okay, but anyway, so total sargas that are available today are 647 by Govindaraja's count. But if you see even in Valmiki Ramayana.net and everywhere, so there is some mismatch in Yuddha Kanda and things like that. Anyway, so this is one thing. 500 sargas they say, but this 500 sargas are limited to 6 kandas, and the Uttarakanda, Tathottaram there, Tatha means 110. So Uttarakanda has 110 sargas. So totally 610, whereas available is 647. That itself shows that there is some problem here. And with the shlokas, also Govindacharya very nicely, what he does is he gives the number of shlokas in each of the kandas. Of course, I'm not going to give you each detail. I mean, already I've taken unnecessary time of yours. But the total available shlokas as of his time is 24,253. Okay, so there is 253 extra shlokas. And then Govindaraja also beautifully, what does he do? So when they say this 24,000 shlokas are there, so he also quotes in his bhashyam. This is a beautiful thing that he does, because that's the way he's locking the available pathas by his time. After that there could have been more interpolations which we don't know, but then he did a good thing by putting these things. So he gives the first pada of all the 1,000 shlokas. So from Tapaswadhyaya Nirtam, where it starts, that's the first, or the first 1,000. Then where does the second 1,000 start from? Where does the third 1,000 start from? Where does the fourth 1,000 starts from? Like that, he gives 24 shloka padas. So you can count that from there, these 1,000 come up. So if there is a mismatch, that means some shlokas have been added later. Anyway, all these things said and done. So this shloka here, the second shloka, Chaturvimshat Sahasrani Shlokana Muktavan Rishihi Tatha Sargashatan Pancha Shatkandani Tathotaram. This shloka, and if you go back to the previous sarga, the 38th shloka in that sarga, so Surashtra Ranjanam Chaiva Vaidehyascha Visarjanam, that phrase of 38th shloka. And mind you, the 38th shloka, if you see, it has 3 lines. Usually when you write Anushtup, it has to be 2 lines. This has 3 lines, but that practice is there sometimes. So you write 3 lines. So Anushtup has, like I said, 8 into 4, 32, plus another 16. So that's sometimes it's acceptable practice. But then the Swarashtra Ranjanam Chaiva Vaidehyascha Visarjanam, that, and the second shloka of Chaturtha Sarga, these are the most, of all these people who speak about Uttarakanda being written by Valmiki himself, they have various views to give you why they say like that. Of all those views, from what I have seen, the strongest kind of view they have is these two. Vaidehyascha Visarjanam, it's said in second sarga itself, and then this third sarga itself, and the fourth sarga mentions 24,000 shlokas, Shatkandani Tathottaram. So you can't have 24,000 shlokas unless you take all the 7 sargas, and then Shatkandani Tathottaram is mentioned. Uttarakanda is also mentioned there. This is what they say. This is their most strongest, what should I say, of their argument. This is the strongest that I felt, strongest argument. And the other arguments that they give is, all the stories that are, so Uttarakanda, mind you, of the 110 sargas, hardly anything describes the story of Rama and Sita. Most of it describes the story of Ravana, his brothers, their tapas, and things like that. The only 2 things about Rama and Sita or related to them that we see in Uttarakanda is Rama banishing, that Rama is not Valmiki's Rama. Some Rama of that Uttarakanda is banishing some Sita. So that Sita Devi is banishing from Ayodhya, and Rama kills a rishi called Shambhuka. So why does he kill rishi called Shambhuka? I will come to that later. So these 2 things are the only extra things that we come to know from Uttarakanda. Everything else is some stories of Ravana and things like that. So the other kind of argument, besides these 2, quoting these 2 shlokas, they say is, so these stories are mentioned in Uttarakanda, and then there's a paramarsha of these stories in the Valmiki Ramayana itself. For example, so there is a mention of Nandishwara's Shapa on Ravana in the Sundarakanda. It comes up, and then Vedavati Shapa on Ravana. These things come up in Sundarakanda, and elsewhere some other things come up. So these people say, so how do you explain those things? Without Uttarakanda, those things cannot be explained. Therefore, these shlokas have also been written by Valmiki. So in essence, they have these 2 kind of arguments. The second argument doesn't, I'm giving you some of my humble views. Okay, so you can take it or leave it. But since this is doing a lot of rounds of late, I thought I should put my views also for you people to observe. I'm not anybody to push my views. Just listen to what I have to say, and then you can make your decision. This is one place where you cannot say so and so Mahatma said it, so it's true, because for all such Mahatmas, I can always give another Mahatma who has said the opposite thing. Then it would lead to the boil down to the question of which Mahatma is great, whether he's true or whether he's true. Only either of them can be true. So you don't have to get into these things. This is something that you have to, or I feel in my humble way, this is something that you have to settle for yourself by you reading the text. You read the text and discover what does it say. Does it fit in? You read the 6 kandas and then read the Uttarakanda. How do you feel about it? Something that you have to discover for yourself. So I have some things to say in this. So the second kind of argument which they say that these stories don't, I mean these stories of Uttarakanda give a completion to what has been mentioned, or slightly passingly mentioned in the other part of Ramayana. So that kind of explanation doesn't hold, because whoever is the author of Uttarakanda, the very reason he would have taken up writing Uttarakanda is because, I mean, these things are mentioned somewhere, so let me create something out of it. That is precisely the reason anybody has written, be it Valmiki or whoever. The reason why they have taken that is because, I mean, there are some loose ends. Let me finish it. So that is a, I mean, that's a general statement. It doesn't prove that Valmiki has written it. Anybody could have written it, taking those loose ends, keeping those things in mind. And about these two shlokas, I have already told you all in a previous session, uh, that Govinda Raja, as far as I remember, and Tilakakara, both of them, or maybe so out of these three Vyakyakaras, two of them, as far as what I have read, they have definitely said that it is possible that these three sargas 2, 3, and 4 are prakshiptas. Or they say it has been written by some other person other than Valmiki. Who that person is, they said it could be his Sishyas who wrote it. But then it is clear even to them from these Vyakyakaras, of them, Tilakakara is more ancient than anybody of these three. Of course, there are Vyakyakaras even before Tilakakara, and those people also say that this shloka is prakshipta. In fact, Tilakakara quotes Kataka Vyakyakara in his Vyakya on the second shloka of fourth sarga, and Katakakara is of the opinion this shloka is prakshipta. It's not written by Valmiki in original. So these ancient Vyakyakaras themselves are saying that these sargas are prakshipta. So it is possible that, I mean, the strongest argument that you have is Vaidehi Ashta Visarjanam and the Shatkandani Tathotaram. So that strongest argument is not so strong, because the Vyakyakaras have showed a possibility or stated a possibility of them being interpolated later. Now, if you read the Shat Kandas of Valmiki and if you read the Uttarakanda, some things are very apparent to you. I mean, it's so apparent that I mean, it's like chewing. Like in Hindi, there's an expression, "Lohe ke chane chabana." So it's like wanting to chew chana made of iron. So if you have to chew iron, whatever snacks, how would it be? It would be very difficult. So I mean, it's impossible. So it's something so apparent to you that when you read these two kandas, not just the writing style of the six kandas and Uttarakanda, it's not even Uttarakanda doesn't even come anywhere close to the writing style, but even the plot. So the plot of the six kandas. So these are things I'm saying in. I mean, I can quote from the shlokas and things like that, but I'm just giving you some viewpoints which perhaps when you people read the Ramayana, when if God willing, I mean, all of us together, when we read the Ramayana, we might even discover these things. Of course, I mean, as we proceed, I will not take up Uttarakanda. We will finish with Yuddha Kanda. There is a reason why that is also done. This is what Tatvedanta told me. And he told me that it seems his father used to say like that. So his father is a great scholar, Rani Narasimha Shastri Garu. So he used to say this. And then Tatvedanta told me, what did his father tell him? So if you see second sarga, the last shloka of second sarga, 43rd shloka, Dashashirascha vadham nishamayatvam. So I told you that time also that this is something called Nandi, and then Nandyante. The Sutradhara is telling, okay, all of you all listen this story. He's telling this and going out. And then what is he telling? Listen to the story of Shirascha Vadha. So the killing of Dashagriva, which is Ravana. That story you listen. So it seems Swamiji's father used to say that when we are giving pravachan or whatever on Ramayana, you should give only till Yuddha Kanda, because what he's telling, listen up to Dashashirascha Vadha. So something like that. So we will finish with Yuddha Kanda when we go ahead. But if you read the Uttarakanda, you will see that the plot of the six kandas is very nicely made, very tight, and the plot of the Uttarakanda is very loose. I mean, there are many inconsistencies in the plot, which even gives rise to the possibility that perhaps the entire Uttarakanda is not written by one person, but written by many people, because there are inconsistencies not only with anecdotes or events mentioned in the Shatkandas, but also within Uttarakanda there are inconsistencies. And then the characterization of these characters, if you see, primarily Rama, Sita, and Lakshmana, the way they behave in the six kandas and the way they behave in Uttarakanda, is not only different, is stunningly diametrically opposite to how they behave in the Shatkandas. There is a beautiful article on this called Uttarakanda, the Pretender Kanda. So you can find it on archive. So it's a very nicely written. I am also happened to read it very recently. So it's a nicely written article. You can see that on archive. It's written by some Parameswaran. I don't know who Parameswaran Ji is, but some Parameswaran Ji it has been written. So Uttarakanda, the Pretender Kanda, he nicely brings out this aspect as how the characters of Shatkanda and the same characters, how they behave in Uttarakanda is so opposite. So some things you should know. Women in the Shatkandas are shown as whoever that woman be, they are shown as people of great self-respect. People, I mean, they could be of a nice, humble nature, or they could be of a very outgoing nature, but they are somebody who are not weak or meek or something like that. They always stand up for their, what should I say, their views and things like that. So such kind of women. And then whereas, I mean, Sita is also like that. Sita Devi, I told you all earlier also that Sita Devi never hesitates to speak what is in her mind. So she even calls Rama some great names. And then even with Lakshmana, during the Maricha thing, I mean, when the golden deer comes, and then even in that context, you will see how Sita Devi speaks. And even in Lanka, even when she's in the captivity of a Rakshasa, where practically she knows nobody in that entire Lanka, she knows nobody. So even in that context, she speaks with great, what should I say, conviction and things like that. She's a very strong lady. That is not just for Sita Devi. Any woman in Shatkandas, when you see, they are like that. People of strong views. So Mandodari will tell Ravana, Shurpanakha will tell Ravana, Vali's wife Tara will tell Vali. So these things are, I mean, you can see these things. They are people of great opinions who speak very strongly about what they feel. Of course, ultimately, all of them conform to what is dharma. That is there. I mean, I will tell you what I feel, but when we will do dharma nishchaya and then go ahead as to what we do. But in the Sita Parityaga episode, whoever wrote the Sita Parityaga episode, you will see that Sita Devi, I mean, she just blankly takes upon herself whatever Rama gives. And this Rama is also, what kind of Rama gives this quote unquote punishment to Sita Devi? He is a person, I mean, Rama is a person in the Shatkandas. You will see that when he has to take a decision, he is open to consultation and views. So Lakshmana will give him views, Sita Devi will give him views, Kausalya will give him views. In fact, there is an entire or rather chapter, a sarga in Yuddha Kanda, where he asks all those Vanaras and everybody on what is their view on accepting Vibhishana, and everybody gives views. All their views he takes into account. So he's like that, and when a good view is given, he appreciates also. When Lakshmana tells something, he tells to Lakshmana, yeah, your view is correct. Let us do like this. So when Sita Devi gives a view, he follows. If he feels this is correct, he follows. He never does things out of, what should I say, so a frenzy. So he always does a consulted view he takes. Whereas if you see in Uttarakanda, there is, so his spies tell him that there is general talk in the kingdom about Sita Devi's chastity. So he immediately, what he does, he summons his brothers and say, I have decided to give up Sita. None of y'all will speak anything against this. So this is not Rama's character. I mean, he's something, and this is such an important matter for him as a king, as a Chakravarti. His Pattamahishi, his only wife, Rama is known for Ekapatni Vrata. So that Rama, when he has to give up the wife, which is an important, so the wife of the Maharaja is an important post in the Dharma system, you know. So he has to abandon them. He consults nobody, no Vasishta, no Vamadeva, no rishis in the Sabha. Not even his mothers are still alive. His brothers are there. Janaka, all these people are there. None of them he consults. Ulta he says, none of you will speak. Just do what I say. So and then that is not heard of Rama. And then Lakshmana also very meekly, okay, Rama said, I will drop her in the forest. That is not there with Lakshmana of the six Kandas. Lakshmana of the six Kandas is known for giving his opinion outright without the least of hesitation, things like that. So he tells Sumantra, when Sumantra is parting from these people, he tells Sumantra that go and tell Dasharatha that from today onwards, I have forsaken him as my father. And things like that. So even to Sita Devi, then she tells these things that you should go in search of Rama in that golden deer kind of episode. There also Lakshmana uses not harsh words, but he uses some strict language there also. And even with Rama, when Rama is in a delirium, I mean, he's lost in his thoughts when he loses Sita. Then also he says things to Rama and brings him back to senses. So that Lakshmana was also not that kind of meekly taking Lakshmana who takes up orders like that. Such Lakshmana is not heard of. If Lakshmana feels that this is something bad, and Lakshmana is somebody who looked upon Sita Devi as his own mother. Sita himself says herself says this in Sundarakanda, that Lakshmana looks upon me as a mother. So Lakshmana wouldn't do something. I mean, just because Rama said it, okay, I will do. He wouldn't do that. He would question. That is Lakshmana's nature. This is not something I am. I mean, I'm not saying out of the blue. If you see the Lakshmana of the six Kandas, you will see that in situations which necessitate his or which require his submission, even there he doesn't submit. He will question and things like that. So these kind of characterizations of characters which you see in Shatkandas and in the Uttarakanda, I mean, they don't jam. I just gave you three examples. There are many more things like that. And then that is, so the Sita Parityaga thing. So then these people quote, this Mahatma said like that Mahatma said like that. I don't want to take names, but then I will give you opposite Mahatmas. So Tattvavedanta ji is of that view, but you might not want to take his view. But even traditional acharyas like Jagat Guru Ramabhadracharya, he's very convicted. I mean, with great conviction, he's very opinionated in that sense that he says the Sita Parityaga has never happened. Uttarakanda is not written by Valmiki. He very vociferously says these things. What I am humbly trying to tell you is that don't go by this Mahatma said that Mahatma said this, because like I said, it always gives scope for another Mahatma would have said something else. You examine, study the six Kandas and Uttarakanda. What do you feel? If you are studying with an open mind, then you will feel that perhaps Uttarakanda is not written by Valmiki. This is what I have come to understand. And fortunately for me, some Mahatmas at least, have told the same thing, expressed the same view. Obviously, we have come almost to the end of time. So let me not progress further with the shlokas, but then tell you a few other things. The other story in the Uttarakanda is Shambhuka Vada. So Shambhuka Vada is, Shambhuka is a rishi. These two things of Sita's Parityaga and Shambhuka Vada are two great blots on Rama's character. And this I am not saying from a modern, liberal or feminist, patriarchal kind of view. I'm not saying it that way, which even from that angle, it's true. And if you are giving arguments from that angle, at least in Sita Parityaga, I can give you arguments saying, no, your viewpoint is wrong. But I'm not coming from such a feminist kind of angle. But the very character of Rama, if you see, I mean, it doesn't gel with the character of Rama. And then Shambhuka Vadha is even more a kind of very disturbing story. Of course, I can't say even more, because Sita Parityaga is an equally disturbing story. Shambhuka Vadha is, so I don't know how many of you all know, but then I'm telling this. So it seems one day Rama is in the court. Of course, by then Sita Devi is not there, I suppose. So a Brahmana comes and says that my son has died. So how did he die? It cannot happen. So Naputra Maranam Kinchit. So we saw that in first Sarga in Rama's Rajya, nobody saw the death of their own son. So that means the elders died before than the younger people. So but then how did this how did this Brahmana's son die? So that is one question. For that Brahmana himself gives an answer, that he tells Rama that you have done some papa. You are the king, you did some papa, that's why I lost my son. Then Rama, what does he do? He calls for all the ministers and then Vasishtha and everybody, and he consults, what is it that I could have done wrong, that because of me a Brahmana's son died. So mind you, when it comes to his reputation, he consults people. When it comes to Sita Devi's reputation, he doesn't consult and just banishes her. I mean, that's a contradiction in itself. But then he consults his ministers, and then they come up with this thing that there is a person called Shambhuka who's a Shudra. He is doing tapas. That's why this Brahmana's son has died. I mean, how do you like this argument? A Brahmana's son has died because a Shudra is doing tapas somewhere, and then Rama decides, okay, I will go and kill him. Then by air he goes, by air marga he goes, and he sees this person doing tapas there. He lands and asks him, who are you? So he says, I'm Shambhuka, I'm a Shudra. Then immediately, no questions asked, immediately he cuts off his head. I mean, how do you like these kind of stories? It's not the kind of Rama that you would see otherwise. So these two kind of, very harsh acts that you see of Rama, you can always say this is Kshatriya Dharma. Rama is the king. Therefore, he has to do these things. As a king, his subjects have doubted his wife's character, so he has to give up his wife. As a king, somebody has died in his kingdom because some other person, whether a Shudra is eligible for tapas, is a completely different topic. I mean, one might have two views on it, though such two views are unnecessary. I mean, everybody is eligible for tapas and these things, but be that as it may, that's a different topic. But then even there, he does this harsh thing of just putting an end to him with no questions asked. So one might say this is his Raja Dharma. But there is a shloka, in fact, 2, 3 times it comes in Ramayana, in the 6 kandas. Rama tells Lakshmana, please don't take resort to that Kshatriya Dharma, which is harsh. So all these things you will see in that essay, he gives with reference. So in the Uttarakanda Pretender Sarga. So he tells these things, don't follow that Kshatriya Dharma which makes you do ahimsa, which makes you do himsa. So he says you should not follow such kind of Kshatriya Dharma. He says, Tyaja Kshatriya Dharma. He says that kind of Kshatriya Dharma you have to give up, Lakshmana. He says that, and he says, I also do that. I don't do, I don't imbibe some, I don't follow some Kshatriya Dharma merely because people want it and it is harsh on somebody else. Such kind of Dharma I don't follow. Rama says that in the 6 kandas. The very same Rama cannot do it completely otherwise in the Uttarakanda. And then Dasharatha also says to Kaushalya, remembering uh, the Shravana Kumara episode, there also he says that, or rather the Shravana Kumara's father says that you have unnecessarily killed my son, but unknowingly, but knowing, so unknowingly he has killed, even that is a great papa. And knowingly for no reason, if somebody is killing a Shudra like Rama killed Shambhuka, then what does it count to? So these things are there, which is very, it's not disturbing. It is disturbing, but not because it doesn't conform to modern ideas of society that we have, but even of Rama's own time. By the 6 kandas, if you judge the Uttarakanda, it just doesn't hold water. So these kind of inconsistencies are there, apart from stories like Ahalya's story, as mentioned in the Balakanda and as mentioned in Uttarakanda, are in opposition. So those inconsistencies are anyway there. But even to an observant, what should I say, reader, these inconsistencies come up very strongly. So I invite all of you all to read the 6 kandas of Valmiki and whatever this Uttarakanda, whoever has written it, definitely not by Valmiki. So that kanda, if you read with an open mind, perhaps, you will be convinced or you will not be convinced, but I would invite all of you all to take it up with an open mind. Don't just jump into conclusions. So as young people, we should have an open mind. So Swamini Vimalananda ji of Chinmaya Mission, I heard one of her videos on YouTube, and she made a statement which made a great impact on me. She says, I cannot imagine people being young and closed-minded at the same time. So we should not be like that. With an open mind, let us read these kandas, and then you will realize that perhaps this doesn't, I have just given you some basic things. There are still a lot more things that I could say. But anyway, I don't want to stretch this topic beyond this session today. I also invite you all to read that article on archive, which is it's a 31 or 32 page article. It's very nicely written. So much of what I said also I have borrowed from that article and telling you, but he makes a lot of sense there. One last thing is, so how could Rama give up? So I will take another 5 minutes. Please don't mind. So how could Rama even order Sita to take Agni Pariksha? So Rama is somebody who loved Sita so much. So people just dismiss by saying that Ramayana is not a love story. So actually Ramayana is a love story, if you see in that sense. He is so disturbed by Sita's loss that you will realize that today Rama will kill himself. So that's how disturbed he becomes. He's hallucinating and things like that. And then thank God Lakshmana was with him that day. Otherwise, Rama would have perhaps ended his life. To that extent, he becomes mentally weakened by Sita's loss. So he loves Sita so much. Such a Rama could not have ordered her just like that. Okay, and he doesn't even tell Sita Devi. He just tells Lakshmana, just go and drop her on the banks. Near Valmiki's ashrama, you drop her and come, and don't tell her anything. And things like that. It's difficult to imagine, and it's difficult to imagine that again, never again he mentions about Sita Devi after he gives away Sita Devi. He abandons Sita Devi. Never again, even that context of Sita Devi comes up in his life. That cannot be. You cannot imagine Rama being like that if you digest or read Rama of the Shatkandas. So then this question would come that how could Rama have ordered the Agni Pariksha also? So mind you, even this episode of Agni, I mean, I'm making a much taller claim, to which I'm not making it uh, with a strict whatever, what should I say, commitment to that kind of argument. But I'm telling you this as a matter of fact, without giving my views on it. My view, I mean, I will tell you my view also, but as a matter of fact, this entire sargas of Agni Pariksha itself, which is those 2 3 sargas there, that itself is missing in some of the old publications of Ramayana. By old, I mean very old publications. One of the, so the earliest published, what should I say, um, books of Ramayana came from 3 places. One is Kumbakonam, one is Bombay, and another is Lahore. Lahore, mind you, was, of course, today Lahore is in Pakistan as a different country, but Lahore was part of India, and Lahore was a great center of, great center like any other place in India. It was having its own, Hindu population and things like that, but it was also a place where these kind of activities happened. Even in Swami Vivekananda's lifetime, you can see he goes to Lahore and gives 3 beautiful lectures in Lahore. Swami Ramatirtha attends those lectures in Lahore. He's influenced, and Ramatirtha is a great saint who comes from Lahore, and things like that. So the first printed books of Valmiki Ramayana comes from these places. There are many sargas which are missing in one edition, and there in another edition, and there in another edition, but missing in this edition, kind of thing. So it seems in the northern, so Lahore and Bombay editions of Valmiki Ramayana, this Sita Agni Pariksha itself is not there, and that episode is missing from some manuscripts. When they came up with this critical edition of Ramayana, so this critical edition doesn't mean that what I don't like I remove. It's not like that. They compare some hundreds of manuscripts from all over India and from Nepal. They have come to brought together, and they have examined, and they have seen which is there where. Only those sargas which are there everywhere, they have put up in the critical edition, and of course they have their own methodology for that. It's not that they didn't like the story, so they didn't put up. So even there they mentioned that, it is mentioned, I think even in the Uttarakanda essay it is mentioned, that the Sita Agni Pariksha kind of things are not mentioned in the northern printed editions. So even Swamiji told this once so Swamiji himself spoke on Ramayana extensively. So he spoke this somewhere. He said this somewhere, that it seems, I don't remember which incident exactly in Valmiki Ramayana, but there was some incident which was very disturbing. He thought, how could, from where did this come? When he read the Ramayana, and then it seems his uncle, his mama, I think, I don't remember exactly, his uncle was also there, and he also read Ramayana very well. So when he came, he asked his uncle, what does this episode mean? And it seems his uncle said, these shlokas I have never read. His uncle was a great scholar on Ramayana, but he said, these shlokas I have never read. Where from you got it? And then it seems when his uncle got back and saw in his book, that book mentions that these shlokas are there in Bombay edition, but they are not there in Lahore edition. So such kind of things are there. So Sita Parityaga, one could say that perhaps it was not written by Valmiki, but even if it was written by Valmiki, which I would like to subscribe to that view, it was written by Valmiki, but that itself, Rama shows great love there. So that context is entirely different, which we will see when we come to Yuddhakanda. Yeah, so I would like to stop with this. Is there something else that I have to say? Yeah, perhaps that's it. So I would welcome all of you all to read these Ramayana with an open mind. Don't have a conclusion. For most of you all, maybe it doesn't matter. I don't know, but I thought I should put these views because these things are out recently, and also in general these things are there. Yeah, the last point was about Agni Pariksha. That particular incident, those 3 sargas are not there in some of the manuscripts that was originally published. So that was what I was trying to say. And the story of Tattvavedantaji and his uncle, that I don't think it was, I don't remember which incident in the Ramayana he was referring to, but he was referring to a particular incident which was not there. And he said that, when I asked my uncle, he said, I've never come across these shlokas, and he saw in his book that those shlokas are not there in some editions. So such kind of things are there. This is not something, so Gita Press edition is not the sacrosanct kind of edition. They have, I have great respect for them. I also, what would I say, suggest that people should read Gita Press editions. But that's not the entire story. I mean, there are other things also. Uh, yeah, so yeah, we will end here. If there is something important that I would have perhaps missed, maybe I will bring up in the next session. But I don't want to drag this Uttarakanda, whether it has been written by Valmiki or not, in the next session. Since all of you all are patiently listening to me, I will take some advantage and end with my view, which is that Uttarakanda is not written by Valmiki. A very great number of scholars are of that view. The least you could say is that the jury is yet out. I mean, they have not yet decided. I mean, it's not a conclusive point that Valmiki has written it or has not written it. I mean, that's the most objective view you can take. And my personal view is that it has not been written by Valmiki. So I would again say that all of you, this is something that we should read and come up to our own conclusion. I'm merely saying, merely believing on Mahatma's words. So there are some things in which Mahatmas differ. For example, in Shankara's case, did Shankara establish 4 pitams or 5 pitams or 6 pitams or 7 pitams? I mean, this conflict is always there. But then these are incidentals. It's not really as important to Shankara as his own philosophy. So did Shankara say there is one Atma or two Atmas? So none of these Mahatmas will differ on that. But on the incidental things, there will always be difference of opinion. So if you are somebody to whom Ramayana means anything, so if you have a love for Valmiki's Ramayana, I invite you all to read all the 6 kandas of Valmiki and the Uttarakanda of whoever, one person or many persons whoever wrote it, read it and then come to your own conclusion. So I will end here. Thank you for patiently listening to all this. It's actually not related perhaps to the text itself, but I thought I will put these views. Om yatra yatra Raghunatha Kirtanam tatra tatra Kritamastakанjalim Bashpavari Paripurnalocanam Marutim Namata Rakshasantakam Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramarpanamastu Om